Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Amy Sam. I am the Health Education Project Specialist at the Maxwell and Eleanor Blum Patient Family Learning Center at Mass General. Today's session is part of our Nutrition Education Series, a special collaboration between the Blum Center and the Department of Nutrition and Food Services at Mass General. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few items with you all. Please note that today's session is being recorded for educational purposes. If you're interested in viewing the recording, it'll be made available on the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. Please note that you are in listen-only mode. Everyone has been muted so you can hear our guest speakers today. If you have any questions for our guest speakers, you may use the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We'll have time from the end. Only Blum Center staff and our guest speakers will see your questions. Please do not share any personal medical information or questions in the chat. If you have a personal medical question, please ask your doctor. Lastly, at the end of today's session, you'll be directed to a brief survey, which we'd like to ask you if it's complete. Your feedback is important to us as we plan future programs. All right, so joining us today, we have Midori Kirby. Midori is currently a dietetic intern at Massachusetts General Hospital. She received her undergraduate degree in public health from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and her master's in nutrition from the Meredith College in Raleigh, North Carolina. Her experience is primarily rooted in the food service industry, where she previously worked as a cook and nutrition educator in a residential eating disorder treatment facility. She joins us today to give a talk on fueling your day, nutrition for the busy life. But before I turn it over to Midori, Erin and Emily, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Gelsman. I'm a senior outpatient dietitian here at MGH, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Child. I'm a clinical nutrition specialist and outpatient, also at MGH.
Thank you. All right, Midori, hand it over to you.
All right, perfect. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started. Again, fueling your day, seeing how we can incorporate nutrition into your busy lifestyle. We kind of already got into the introduction, but again, my name's Midori. I'm currently a dietetic intern. I have my master's in nutrition from Meredith College, my bachelor's in public health from UNC Chapel Hill. I am from Durham, North Carolina, so I am adjusting to this very chilly weather. And a fun fact about me is that I speak Japanese and I ride the unicycle. So that's just a little bit about me. Getting right into the presentation, my goal and purpose for this presentation is to provide you guys with a better sense of food autonomy and confidence surrounding nutrition. And what I mean by that is sharing this presentation, I hope that you can feel more comfortable, confident, in control of the choices you make around fueling your body. And maybe not every point will resonate with you, but finding those strategies that do fit into your lifestyle. There's a lot of information out there about nutrition and food. So my aim is to explain how we can incorporate some health promoting foods in simple and time efficient ways. So here's our agenda for today. We'll start off more broad and basic. What exactly does a healthy plate or a healthy meal look like? And we'll go over some general guidelines, and then we will move on to planning strategies. So how can we use those guidelines, and how can we, pack a healthy plate for us at home or on the go? We'll discuss food safety for our meal prep or leftovers. We'll talk about satiating snacks, how we can incorporate nutrition in them. Same with eating out and convenience meals. How can we up the nutrition factor in those as well? And then lastly, we'll talk about having a backup plan, always having a backup plan. So we will start with, what does a nutritious meal look like? So this is the USDA guidelines, the My Plate guidelines, that is used to create a balanced plate. You can kind of see half of the plate is recommended to be fruits and vegetables. And then we have a quarter of your plate, about a fistful size of grains, And they recommend half of your grains be whole grains, and then another quarter of your plate be protein. And we also recommend low fat or fat-free dairy products. And then lastly, we try to limit food and beverages with added sugar, saturated fat, and then sodium as well. So looking at this guideline and transferring it into real life, how would my plate look? This is another example from the My Plate. This is a veggie loaded mashed potato bowl. So as you can see, there's a half plate of veggies. There's some grilled broccoli, a cucumber and tomato salad. And then they have the starch with the mashed potato as a base. And then in the recipe, there's some Greek yogurt incorporated in the mashed potato to give it its creaminess. So they have the dairy component in there as well. And then the chickpeas acts as the protein aspect, the plant-based protein. And so obviously a meal doesn't have to check off every single box to be considered nutritious, but it's a great guide when you're aiming for a well-balanced plate. And so how can we set ourselves up for success and make it easier for us to have these balanced meals more regularly? We'll talk about some weekly menu strategies, grocery shopping, and then meal ingredient prepping as well as an option. So for weekly menus, I think weekly menus can be a great way to create some structure and help you find specific days or specific meals that you think you're able to incorporate meal prep or cooking in general. It's important to avoid an all or nothing mindset, and food is, of course, very social. It's very cultural. It's more than okay to enjoy a meal out, grab takeout, things like that. I think having a schedule, it can remove some of the decision fatigue that comes with, trying to figure out what you're going to do for a meal on the spot. So you can start out small, meet yourself where you're at. If you primarily do takeout for all of your meals, for example, you could try, just to cook a double portion on Sunday and have leftovers on Monday, and those could be your 2 planned meal days. Or you could decide to make a breakfast schedule, for example, if you feel like breakfast specifically, you struggle fitting it in, or you eat out for breakfast regularly, and that's something you want to try to change. You could try to prep some hard-boiled eggs that you could grab on the go, or make overnight oats a few nights out of the week. So again, this is just an example schedule, but finding something that works for you in that way. And so let's say you make your weekly schedule and you decide you want to make a planned meal 3 nights out of the week, for example. And now you're met with a question, what do I prep? What do I make? I think it's important to consider your preferences. Don't throw that out of the window just because, maybe you think your favorite foods can't fit into a healthy lifestyle, but we want to make that change sustainable. So figuring out how to take a favorite meal and, making it more balanced, making it easy to prep, that would be our goal. So this is just a personal example. A personal favorite of mine is oyakodon. It's a Japanese dish that my mom used to make for me all the time. It's pretty simple to begin with, which is helpful, but it's just like chicken, eggs, onions, stewed with the sweet soy sauce over a bed of rice. And so looking at this, how can we change the recipe to reduce the cooking time even further? And one way would be pre-cooking your rice earlier in the week, and then that's a quick reheat in the microwave. And then maybe you could pre-slice onions, store pre-cooked or shredded chicken. And then at dinner time, it really just is assembling. So you could have the eggs, mix it with some soy sauce, sugar, and then add in chicken and onions in a frying pan, and then throw it over rice. And that's a quick dinner. And then you could ask yourself, how can we increase the nutrition in this even further? Maybe you could add a side of broccoli, add some spinach in the eggs. It's purely just an example, but just how you can identify simple but favorite meals and find shortcuts and nutritious additions that make it an easy and balanced option. And then if you're in a household with your partner or children, their preferences obviously matter as well. So enlisting them in brainstorming can, become a family event. What foods do your kids like? What meals are they excited to see on the menu? And then what are your partner's preferences? And then finding staples is also great. If you find a meal that you enjoy and your family enjoys it, you find it easy to prepare and you find it stores well, that's great. Tried and true recipes deserve repeats. And so you can consistently keep that on rotation. And then grocery shopping. Grocery shopping can feel like a really time-consuming and overwhelming task if you have no plan going into it. So you can use your weekly menu planning and scheduling as a guide. I like to, break it down into what grains and carbs, what proteins, what vegetables, what fruits, what dairy, and then like any other miscellaneous items you need, snacks you want to take with you to work, things like that. And then a good rule of thumb is the perimeter of the grocery store is where you can find your fruits, your vegetables, protein, dairy. And so doing a loop around the perimeter and knocking out items on the list that way is a great strategy and can make it a little bit more time efficient. And then ingredients can also be an inspiration for meals. So, maybe you want to use eggs and mixed vegetables for a breakfast burrito meal for, you want to prep that. How can you use those ingredients in another meal? And maybe that way you can simplify your shopping list. So for this example specifically, like you can use the eggs and the vegetables in an egg fried rice for a meal later on in the evening or a different day. And then when planning how to prep meals within your week, meal prepping and ingredient prepping are also both great options. With meal prepping, you would be prepping entire meals and pre-portioning them, and they're practically ready to go at meal times. It's very time efficient. You can just microwave a meal and have it, ready in a few minutes. Some downsides that you might find is that they do get a little repetitive. You might have some flavor fatigue, and then you have quite a bit of time you have to invest preparing the meals initially when you're making those large batches. Another option, ingredient prepping. It involves preparation of individual ingredients. So, maybe you're chopping up vegetables or you're pre-cooking grains, hard boiling eggs, pre-portioning or pre-cooking proteins, things like that. It's kind of similar to how a restaurant would prepare for a dinner service, for example. You just have everything prepared, and then when it comes time to mealtime, you just have to heat or assemble, maybe add sauces, things like that. This strategy allows more variety and flexibility with the meals you make, but it does require some more additional time compared to the meal prep at like the meal time, because you would have to assemble. So these are just some easy to prep ingredients for an ingredient prep strategy. Pre-cooking grains and starches is a great place to start. Quinoa especially is like a very quick cooking grain. Pasta is quick as well. Pre-rinsing and storing canned goods is a good way to cut time. If you want to use beans or chickpeas as a protein and fiber source, that's a quick rinse and store. Cooking and storing proteins as well, just having like diced chicken or ground beef, pork, turkey, things like that. Hard-boiled eggs are also a quick protein. Chopping vegetables, maybe having just like carrot and celery, cucumber sticks for snacks. And then cooking and storing vegetables, like the heartier vegetables like asparagus, green beans, broccoli, that's a great option as well. And so this is how we could use that ingredient prep to create a meal. So it's good to, using the My Plate as an example, as a guide, half of the plate being fruits and vegetables. Here we have a base of leafy greens, and then there's that green pepper and onion mix, but having that as half the plate. And then you would add on your grains or starches. In this case, it's brown rice. And then your protein source as well, having that canned bean. It can be anything, chicken, canned tuna, hard-boiled eggs. And then the healthy fat coming from the avocado, and then adding some extra flavor, whether that's through, dressings or hot sauce. In this case, it looks like they've added some salsa. So that is how you could, incorporate that ingredient prep into a balanced meal. So when it comes to meal prepping and storing food, food safety is also essential to discuss. We want to be safe. So if you do decide to meal prep, it's important that we keep food outside of the danger zone. The danger zone is 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the temperature that bacteria finds easiest to grow in, and we want to minimize that as much as possible. So when you are prepping food, you want to cool the food down as rapidly as you can, but the general rule is that we want the food in the refrigerator or the freezer within 2 hours of cooking, and then 2 hours of cooking and removing it from heat. If you make a batch of something like chili, for example, it's helpful to portion into smaller containers because it helps the cooling process. And then later on, if you have individual containers in the freezer, it will help you because you don't want to be thawing and refreezing your leftovers multiple times. So having it in those individual containers is very helpful. In the fridge, meals are generally safe for 3 to 4 days. Definitely check on the quality of your food. If something feels suspicious to you, when in doubt, throw it out. Obviously, we don't want to waste food, but safety does come first always. And then in the freezer, the guidelines say 3 to 4 months. This is the time frame for quality purposes. Freezer items are theoretically safe indefinitely, but there may be some changes in texture, flavor, things like that. So it's good to make note of that. And then maintaining quality. Maintaining the quality of your ingredients that you prep can be an issue for some people. Some tips would be using airtight containers. They're really helpful in not only, preventing spills and smells in your fridge, but keeping the air from circulating into your food will slow down the reactions that cause food to spoil. And then it also helps in the freezer with preventing freezer burn. Another trick that I find helpful is using paper towels in containers for food that emit a lot of moisture. So that would be a lot of your fruits and vegetables. In the photo to your right, there's some blueberries as an example. I think berries specifically are one of those things that once you wash, they start to go bad very quickly. You can, turn around and look away for 1 second and then your strawberry has mold on it. So, not washing your fruit until it's ready to eat will help maintain its freshness. But if you're, trying to save some time and want something quick and easy to grab that's pre-washed, lining the containers with paper towels is definitely a good idea. Same goes for leafy greens. If you're buying leafy greens and then washing them or purchasing pre-washed greens, it's a good idea. You can just stick a paper towel in the bag once you open it and it'll help absorb some of that excess moisture that might collect in the fridge. Using acid can help prevent browning of certain fruits. So you guys have, maybe used the strategy of adding lemon juice or lime juice to apples. So that's also a great one. You can add lime to avocado or guacamole, and that helps maintain the color of some of your items. And then some vegetables also do well submerged in water. So these would be vegetables that you want to keep raw and crispy, so that like pre-cut celery sticks, carrot sticks, radishes. It's just important to change the water every few days if you do decide to use this method. And then storing items separately is also a way you can help maintain freshness. Here I've highlighted keeping certain fruits and vegetables separate, as they can actually speed up the ripening of others. For example, fruits like bananas, tomatoes, melons, avocados, or climacteric fruits, which just means they ripen after they harvest and they release a gas, ethylene gas, which helps them with the ripening process. If they're stored with other fruits and vegetables that are non-climacteric, it can make those items ripen and spoil faster. For example, a non-climacteric fruit would be berries and citrus. And then storing those foods, again, like bananas, avocados, tomatoes, in bags can lead to spoilage because it's, collecting that ethylene gas in the bag, and it will make them store or spoil faster. So keeping them out on the counter will make them last a little longer. And then onions are also in that category of releasing ethylene gas. So it's good to keep them separate from potatoes if you're storing them in the pantry, for example, together, because then it'll cause the potatoes to sprout. There are products available on the market like Blue Apple that sequester the ethylene gas and prevent fruits from ripening further. So that's also an option. And when it comes to thawing and reheating your prep from the freezer or the refrigerator, the three main safe strategies that you have available, if it is frozen, thawing it overnight in the fridge, running it under cold water, or popping it in the microwave. The refrigerator is the safest option because you keep your food out of the danger zone. It never goes above that 40 Fahrenheit. So it's considered very safe. But of course, it can take a long time. You'd have to remember to put it in the fridge the night before. And then running airtight containers under cold water is a little less time consuming than the refrigerator, but it still takes some effort. You'd have to change the water every 30 minutes. And so I think putting it in the microwave is probably going to be the most practical thawing method for most of us. And it's also a thawing and reheating method combined, so it is very convenient. But it can thaw things unevenly, so it's a good idea to stir them intermittently to avoid that. And then when reheating pre-prepped items, bringing them back up to that temperature of 165 degrees helps ensure that we kill any bacteria. And if you don't have a thermometer, that might just look like bringing a soup or chili up to a boil, or making sure items are steaming hot when they come out of the microwave. Like I mentioned before, it's good to have items stored in single serving containers, so we don't freeze, thaw, reheat items multiple times. I just wanted to make a note, especially when it comes to rice and grains, those foods specifically can be really dangerous if you leave them in that danger zone of 40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and we want to avoid food poisoning. So if you do store multiple servings in a container, you should either pre-portion out a serving and then reheat it, and that will be better than, you don't want to reheat the container as a whole. And then if you're using glass containers to store items in your freezer, it's important to note that they should be tempered glass. Pyrex containers are considered safe to freeze and safe to thaw in the fridge or the water method. If you do thaw them in the microwave, it is considered safe, but just to reduce the risk of the glass breaking, it's good practice to let the dish stand out in room temperature for a few minutes. And then using the defrost button on your microwave would prevent thermal shock of your storage container and reduce the risk of breaking. All right, so moving on to snacks, living a busy lifestyle. I think snacks and finding satiating snacks is a great, strategy, maybe less overwhelming than meal or ingredient prepping, as they can kind of seem like monumental tasks at times. Snacks are such a great way to incorporate nutrition into your day. It can be really helpful in preventing dips in energy levels, especially if you're going a long period of time between meals. Usually eating between 3 to 4 hours is recommended. If you're going over 6 hours between meal times, a snack is a good idea, definitely. Having a satiating snack can help in preventing you from getting so hungry to the point where you feel this really strong urgency to get in your next meal. And that urgency can make it difficult to prioritize nutrition in the moment. Snacks are also a great way to boost fiber, a great way to boost protein if that's something you find difficult. it's a great way to incorporate nutrition intake in general if you're someone who struggles with eating enough throughout the day or eating larger meals. And so when you're thinking about what snacks you want to make for yourself, it's a good place to start, by asking, when will you need this snack? Do you have a long gap in your day where you benefit from one? Have you noticed trends where you get really fatigued during breakfast and lunch, for example? And then in these contexts, is this snack something you can make at home? Is it something you have to pack with you, something grab and go? And then again, thinking about your own satisfaction, your own preferences, what sounds good to you? Are there textures you really enjoy? Do you need something crunchy? Do you like sweeter snacks, savory snacks? And then how hungry are you? Do you need a larger snack, a small pick-me-up? And then how can we make it satiating? So we'll go over some strategies, how can we make a snack that keeps us full and satisfied? So again, looking at your preferences, what will satisfy you, and then make it more satiating. And that is by adding protein and fiber to your snacks. These are just a few examples of snacks that include both protein and fiber. If you're someone who enjoys having fruit for a snack, that's a great place to start. Fruit's packed with vitamins. It's a great source of fiber. And so how can we make that piece of fruit make you fuller for longer? So here there's apples, bananas. You could add a side of peanut butter to add protein and fiber as well. Dairy can be a great way to increase protein in your snacks. So here I have cottage cheese with grapes or Greek yogurt with berries. If you're more of a savory snack person, cheese and crackers is a classic combo. You can up the fiber intake by choosing whole wheat crackers. Common brands you might recognize being, Wheat Thins or Triscuits, things like that. And then cheese would be the protein source. You could opt for Parmesan, mozzarella, Gouda, Gruyere, and of course cottage cheese. Those are some higher protein cheese options. Hummus and veggies, another classic combo. It's great for taking on the go, especially if you have those individual hummus cups. Popcorn and roasted chickpeas is also a super high fiber combo that can be really satisfying, especially if you want something crunchy in texture. And so stereotypical snack foods can also be used to create a meal with balance if that's something that feels much more, manageable, attainable than meal prepping or ingredient prepping. Thinking about that My Plate that we discussed earlier, doing our best to try to incorporate half a plate or 2 fistfuls of veggies, a quarter of the plate or fistful size of whole grains, another quarter or palm size, have that be protein, using that as a guide. So here I have the example of, cut up cucumbers, carrot and celery sticks, and then a handful of grapes. That could be our half plate of fruit and vegetables. And then we have some whole wheat crackers as the grain, cottage cheese, hard-boiled eggs as the protein, and then a sprinkle of trail mix. Again, adds more fiber, healthy fats, things like that. So you can kind of see how by creating a snack plate, it might not be something you'd associate with a nutritious home-cooked meal per se, but it's a great lower effort strategy that allows you to incorporate nutrition into your diet. And then eating out and convenience meals. Dining out, takeout, convenience meals like box mac and cheese, might get a bad rap, but it's, right in the name, it's very convenient. Taking it out of your diet 100% completely is not practical, nor is it necessary. If it's a routine part of your eating habits, there are ways that you can increase the nutrition of these meals. So looking again, how can we add? How can we add to your meal to make it more nutritious? Similarly to what I went over with snacks, adding protein and fiber is a great place to start. Fiber could be, in the form of a side of fruit, side salad, a cooked vegetable side, things like that when you're going out. Incorporating a protein might be, let's say you're having a salad as your main meal, adding chicken, adding beans, tofu, shrimp, fish, any protein option like that. Adding whole grains is also a great option if you're having a sandwich, for example, opting for whole wheat instead of white bread, or if a dish comes with a side of bread, opting for a wheat roll if that's an option. And then here are a few meal examples of, how do you add that protein and fiber. If you're having a pizza dinner out, ordering a side salad, if you're going with a partner, maybe you can get a salad to share. If you're doing a frozen pizza, can you have one of those bagged salad kits on hand that you just whip up real quick on the side? Maybe you're going out for sushi. It's a great source of protein. With the fish, maybe you can add some fiber by getting in some edamame. Maybe there's a seaweed salad on the menu. And then boxed mac and cheese, finding a vegetable that you think would pair well. Broccoli mac and cheese is a classic combo. It's a great way to add some fiber. And then maybe you're making instant ramen at home. It's so convenient. You just, a few minutes to boil water and fill up the cup with that boiling water. Maybe you can throw in some spinach while you're adding that hot water in. Maybe you have some hard-boiled eggs that you have prepped and you can add that in. So that will be a way to increase protein and fiber. Maybe at breakfast time, breakfast sandwiches are really convenient for you. That's a great way to add protein into your morning. So maybe you can add a side of fruit and that will up the fiber content. And maybe you could use a whole wheat bread, changes like that to, make it a little bit more nutritious. And then choose well, eat well, specifically if you're eating at MGH. I'm sure many of you guys have seen these little triangles in the cafeterias or the dining areas. Each item that's served at MGH can be, categorized into the green, yellow, or red category. It's pretty intuitive. Green options are the ones you want to choose most often. Yellow, choose less often. And then red, there's better options in green or yellow. With that being said, again, being practical and realistic, you don't have to only eat green items, but instead you just use this as a guide, as a way to be aware of your food choices and your food options. So if you find a green item that you really, really like, make note of that and try to routinely incorporate that into your, week. So just an example kind of how things are coded. This is the yellow coded entree. This is a Greek power tofu bowl. So you can see the bowl provides a whole grain. It has farro, it has a lean protein and the tofu and then chickpeas. It includes lots of vegetables. It's on a Greek salad base. It also has eggplants and peppers in the farro mix. And it is, has lots of vitamins and nutrients. It's coded yellow because it has more than 5 grams of saturated fat and it has more than 500 calories per serving. So that's just kind of how they code things. And so for today specifically, here are some green options that are being offered. If you need something quick to go, there's a light tuna salad sandwich on whole wheat. It's made with light mayo that's coded green. There's a chickpea avocado panini at the panini station. It's actually a new recipe that was added earlier this fall by a different dietetic intern. So that's a great option. And then at the salad bar, there's always a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables and lean protein options. The green special for today on the salad bar is a barley tomato salad. So that'd be a great way to add some fiber. So yeah, all these options provide, whole grain, fiber, protein. And then at the Eat Street Cafe at MGH, a green option usually available at the carvery station. Today they have the chicken cordon bleu, which is a yellow item, but you could, use the balanced plate method. Again, thinking about the guideline, use that chicken as the protein source and try to add the offered sides. For example, they have green beans and balsamic carrots today. That could be your half plate of vegetables. And then you could grab a whole grain like a wheat roll or a wheat pita, whole wheat pita that you could grab that's a la carte, which is located near the salad bar usually. So that's just an example of how, you could create the My Plate. Even if it's a yellow item, you can make it a little more balanced. And backup plan, lastly, backup plan. So to wrap things up, I just wanted to emphasize that fueling our body is always the priority. It's important to be giving ourselves fuel every 4 to 6 hours, and maybe the healthy choice is not the available choice. In that case, having backups is a great idea. Maybe you can squeeze in time to make a PB&J. Maybe you can just make scrambled eggs for dinner, a frozen meal, a microwavable meal. Eating out, dining out, that's always preferred to skipping meals entirely. Maybe. And so that is my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time. Just a quick recap, we talked about the healthy plate guidelines, making weekly schedules, meal and ingredient prepping strategies, food safety, satiating snacks, adding nutrition into convenience meals. I know we went over a lot. So again, thank you for your time. And yeah, any questions that you guys might have, I'd love to answer.
Thank you, Midori. We are now at the end of the session. If you have any questions for Midori, please enter them in the chat. We have a question regarding those guidelines you provided, these storage, thawing guidelines. Where can one go online to get this information?
So for the storage guidelines, the USDA is a great place if you just go to their website and look up like how to safely store my leftovers. They have like lots of handouts and easy to digest resources. So that's a good place I would suggest to start.
Thank you. And what are your thoughts? This person may have missed this, but what do you recommend about not to skip meals?
About not skipping meals?
Yes.
Oh,
Why
I'm
do
saying
you recommend not to skip meals? Why is it not
because
recommended?
I would just say that it's good to, give yourself a continuous source of energy throughout the day. Having those dips and getting so hungry to the point where you feel, this urgency to eat can, make it makes it hard to focus on prioritizing nutrition if, you're at a state of being so hungry, and that often results from skipping meals and not fueling yourself properly.
And we don't always think about foods so in addition to providing energy, eating regularly helps to support normal digestion. It helps to move things through your digestive system. So really important there. It can be helpful for blood sugar regulation. So definitely helpful to eat throughout the day. And what we tend to see with meal skipping, especially if it's a breakfast or a lunch, is that the body needs a certain amount of calories to function. And so that tends to get ramped up at the end of the day when we're fatigued. It can be harder to make healthy decisions. And so it just sets up a perfect storm of having a less than ideal diet at that time, at that late stage of hunger.
And for those who are unable to fit in meals throughout the day, would healthy snacks be a good option?
Yeah, definitely. I think snacks are a great way to incorporate nutrition if you, don't have time to fit in a full meal, or you don't have like the hunger or the appetite to fit in full large meals. Snacks can be a great way to, add it in intermittently throughout the day.
Thank you. Are there any online websites that you would recommend where one can visit for some simple cooking recipes, healthy food snack options?
I don't know if Emily or Erin have like specific people that they'd like to recommend, but usually just Googling is what I would do.
In our office, we often recommend Eating Well as a resource. They used to be a print magazine, but now they're all online. They have a big database by different kind of health concerns, conditions, kind of how fast you want to spend to cook a meal. But Eating Well is mostly our dietitian run, so their stuff is pretty good. And then another resource that I think can be helpful, it's more budget minded, is a website called Budget Bites. They also offer like meal plans, one pot meals, lots of like nice kind of fast strategies. And it's much more kind of cost based. So
Thank you. We have some positive feedback in the chat as well. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so why don't we give it about another minute to see if any folks have additional questions. Otherwise, we can always wrap up a few minutes early as well. And while we wait, I did want to remind people that this session is being recorded. So if you'd like, a replay of this, want to share with any of the loved ones, particularly any of the slides that were shared that were extremely helpful in today's presentation, you can always watch this recording. It will be made available on the Blum Center website at massgeneral.org/Blum-Center. I'll also enter that in the chat, and that should be made available online, I want to say like in 2 to 3 weeks. Let me share that in the chat. So that's the direct link to the Blum website within there. Just click on the button that says watch past webinars and should be available there. So I don't see any additional questions before we close today's session. Midori, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Just thank you so much for listening. And yeah, nutrition can seem like really overwhelming and intimidating, but just focusing on like little ways you can incorporate into your day, I think is a fantastic place to start.
Thank you. All right, so I think we can wrap up a few minutes early. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Hopefully you found today's session helpful. As we mentioned, today's session is part of the nutrition education series, so stay tuned as we include more educational sessions as part of the series. You can visit that website that I provided in the link to the Blum Center website, where we'll post additional sessions as they're being offered. All right, everyone, thank you so much for your time. Take care.